Anastasia Crickley. I've been involved with civil society organisations all my life. For a living, I work in university in Maynooth. I want to make three comments, if I may, and they're a little bit about bridging what Richard has been speaking about. I think the basic premise that more equal societies do better is a very important one for all of us at the moment, and one which I think is crucial for any of us who are concerned with change. And thank you very much for your very detailed and very, very helpful way of explaining it to us this morning. It seems to me, though, that one of the issues that I didn't hear you speak about, which I think is a reality, and it's also a reality from its lack of visible sort of presence in the room, is the issue of diversity, difference, and racism and discrimination, and how that interacts with the concern to make more equal societies. I'm not convinced that some of the data that you're talking about hold up from some of the experience I've had at a European level with regard to people's perceptions of racism and discrimination and their own experiences of it. It seems to happen across some of those divides. Secondly, I would be concerned, and I'm sure it's not what you're saying, I would be concerned if we thought that bowling alone and Robert Putnam and the sort of self-help, which in the end is dependent on people doing it for themselves and doing it for themselves alone, is a mechanism which could bring about the sort of change that you're talking about. Because it seems to me that the sort of change that you're talking about requires structural change, however we go about getting it, maybe incrementally or maybe not all at the one time. And thirdly, I think we are challenged. I felt you made a very important point about evolved sensitivities to social hierarchy and social status. Now, I've spent a good bit of time over the last while up and down the country talking about cutbacks and being involved with groups and organisations that are talking about them. And I think all of us here this morning need to be challenged to engage more with some of those local discussions. My comment is really a bit about how we make the link between today and who's here today and what happens next. And one thing I can't avoid saying is that there are more men here today, and more men spoke already this morning, that were either present or spoke at any gathering of the community sector I've been at in the last year or two. I think it's important, that these gatherings happen, but I think it's absolutely crucial that coming out of this morning, what we move forward with is a movement that brings the people who are part of the challenges that we're facing with us, and in particular the women, and not just us women who are good at getting up and talking, but women from diverse backgrounds also.
Fortunately, my co-author is a woman, and she gets invitations which I don't get, because I think people are very keen to write that balance, and we laugh at it, but I know it's at home, but it's a very serious issue, an important one. I think actually it relates to the racism issue, because I think that the effect of, if you're deprived of respect and status and so on, not only do you try and get people to respect you, there's one way, if I've got no other forms of access to status, the one way I can make you respect me is by thumping you. And that's, the connection with violence. But it looks as if a lot of the downward discrimination, the prejudice, snobbishness and so on, at the bottom it comes out in terms of racism and discrimination against any minority or group of people who is weaker and more vulnerable. So humiliated men are more likely to be violent to women and for that matter their children. But you see these processes in some situations very clearly. I mean, think of the sort of shame and humiliation of men in prison, at the bottom of society. And the group they take it out on are the sex offenders. At least I'm better than those bastards. And you know perfectly well from the sort of conflicts in Northern Ireland how those are fueled by the sort of status things, and one group feeling they're regarded as inferior to the other. So although I think that you're right to say that you get racism often in some of the more equal countries as well, I think that is often because there is less history of integration. You know, some countries have had it for much longer than others, but in the US it's very clear that measures of discrimination and prejudice are associated with inequality. And whether Americans think black population have a low social position because they're not given opportunities in the education system and so on, or whether they think it's because they're lazy and or stupid or whatever. Questions of that kind show the link between greater inequality and greater prejudice. So, although it doesn't pan out because societies are having to absorb migrant populations which are often totally unused to it, I think that these problems are always made worse by more inequality, because you do try and gain your status by putting down the people below you.